Every era of basketball has had a team that felt untouchable, a group that looked stronger, sharper, and more in sync than everyone else. Some of these teams dominated with size, others with skill. Some relied on raw physicality while others mastered the geometry of the modern game. And for decades, fans have argued over which one of those giants stands above the rest. Not the best player, not the best dynasty. I'm talking about the single greatest team ever assembled. So to make sense of all of this, we need one guideline. Each franchise gets only one representative. That keeps this search focused. It keeps it fair, and it keeps the video from turning into a Chicago or Los Angeles showcase. One team per franchise forces us to identify the absolute peak version of every era, the moment when these organizations reach their final form. From there, our journey begins. We'll move through the different styles, different philosophies, and different interpretations of what dominance even looks like. Some of these teams redefined basketball. Some crushed the league through sheer talent. Others survived pressure that would have broken anyone else. Each one of them left an imprint that still shapes how the sport is played today. And when the dust settles, we'll make a choice. One team, above all the others, will be crowned as the greatest team in NBA history. Let's get started with the story of the 2001 Los Angeles Lakers. This team didn't begin with dominance. It begins with discomfort. The year before, Los Angeles won the championship, but that title didn't fix the cracks beneath the surface. If anything, it exposed them.
The differences between Kobe and Shaq always simmered beneath the surface. And this week, the feud boiled over.
Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant were the best duo in basketball, but they were also two forces moving in different directions. Shaq saw the game as a power struggle. He overwhelmed the opponent, bent the defense, and punished anyone who stepped inside the paint. And Kobe saw it as an art form. Angles, rhythm, isolation mastery, and the hunger to prove that he could carry the Lakers even while sharing the floor with the most dominant player of all time. And that tension shaped the entire regular season. The Lakers finished with 56 wins. Good, but not overwhelming. Their defense slipped. Their focus wavered. They looked bored in December, irritated in January, and careless in February. Kobe pushed for more responsibility and more touches. Shaq was frustrated with conditioning criticisms. Phil Jackson tried to manage all of this with his usual calm, but he could only guide the ship. He couldn't force it to sail straight. And even beyond those two stars, the team felt uneven. Derek Fisher missed half the season with a foot injury. Brian Shaw showed his age. Horace Grant struggled to recapture the level he once had in Orlando and Chicago. Rick Fox, Robert Horry, and Ty Lue provided steady sparks, but the roster didn't look like a powerhouse on paper. The triangle offense ran hot and cold. The Lakers had moments of brilliance, but then stretches where everything looked strangely mortal. But the thing about this team, the thing that separates them from normal champions, is that the regular season was never the real story. It was just a disguise. The long exhale before the breath gets held. Because once the playoffs began, every problem evaporated. The 2001 Lakers didn't find their identity in the postseason. Instead, they revealed it to the rest of the world. Shaquille O'Neal turned into a force that no defense could plan for. The power, the footwork, the timing, the relentlessness. He controlled every single inch of space near the rim. There were games where opposing bigs looked physically overwhelmed in a way that almost looked unfair. Shaq wasn't just dominating, he was dictating the terms of every possession. Teams were forced to double him, but as y'all know, doubling him opened everything else. And that's where Kobe Bryant reached a different level. Kobe's end of the regular season surge carried straight into April, and by the time the playoffs started, he was playing with the kind of precision and fire that makes a scorer unguardable. He attacked every coverage. He hunted mismatches. He shredded single coverage and punished double teams. These weren't empty scoring explosions. They were calculated strikes against teams who had no way to contain both him and Shaq at the same time. With Derek Fisher back, the team's balance returned. Rick Fox became a stabilizer. Robert Horry hit big shots and made big plays like he always did. Lue and Shaw kept the backcourt composed, and Phil Jackson felt more in control, using the triangle to blend egos all into one system. And then the obliteration began. Portland never had a chance. Sacramento was rising, sure, but they just couldn't find a weakness. And San Antonio entered the postseason with the league's best record and the best defense. But unfortunately for them, they got completely overwhelmed as the Lakers swept them out of the bracket. That Spurs series is what makes the 2001 Lakers terrifying historically. Tim Duncan and David Robinson were still elite. Their defense was structured. Their system was disciplined. But none of that mattered. Los Angeles didn't just beat the Spurs. They dismantled them. They made a great team look average. And that leads to the question critics always ask. Were the Lakers' playoff opponents weak? The answer is pretty simple. No, not even close. Portland was a veteran playoff team with size and defense. Sacramento was building a future contender with elite talent. San Antonio had Hall of Fame pillars and a championship pedigree. And in the finals, Philadelphia had the MVP of the league, the coach of the year, the defensive player of the year, and the sixth man of the year, all on one team. The East wasn't weak. The Lakers were just simply overwhelming. Allen Iverson's Game 1 masterpiece was the lone spark anyone managed to land. It took overtime and one of the greatest individual finals performances ever recorded. After that moment, Los Angeles tightened the screws and closed the series out with complete control. Their playoff record was 15-1. No team has ever destroyed a postseason field with such total certainty. The 2017 Warriors matched their winning percentage, but the Lakers did it all against three legitimate Western Conference contenders during the height of the physical defensive era of the 2000s. This is why the Lakers belong on this list. Not because the regular season was flawless. It wasn't. Not because their chemistry was perfect. It wasn't. They belong here because when the lights went up, they became something that no other team in the era could approach. They had the most dominant center of all time. They had one of the most explosive perimeter scorers the league has ever seen. They had a coach who understood how to manage superstars and maximize role players. They had championship DNA. They had answers for every style. And when they finally clicked, their ceiling was higher than almost anyone who has ever stepped onto a basketball court.
Who finished with a 15-1 run, the best all-time playoff winning percentage in the history of the league.
The 2001 Lakers didn't just win a title. They became a version of themselves that felt almost supernatural. And that identity, not the win total, is what secures their place in the search for the greatest team in NBA history. Teams usually earn greatness through consistency. The 01 Lakers didn't. They earned it by becoming something unstoppable when the moment demanded it. And they aren't the only team on this list that transformed under pressure. Years later, in a completely different NBA, another group would learn how to flip that same switch. Not through size or power, but through precision, chemistry, and a superstar reaching the peak of his career. Greatness can come from raw strength, but it also comes from transformation. The 2001 Lakers exploded into their peak like a sudden shock. The 2013 Miami Heat arrived there through something far more deliberate, an evolution in chemistry, trust, and purpose. Their story begins in turbulence too, but of a different kind. The Heat entered the season as defending champions, yet their title didn't erase the pressure that had followed them since the day LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh joined forces. Every misstep, every cold stretch, every close game became evidence for critics who still believed the Big Three experiment was destined to collapse. Miami wasn't just playing against opponents, they were playing against expectations, against narratives, against the weight of their own creation. And the early season reflected that exact tension. The Heat won games, but they didn't always look sharp. Their defense felt loose, their energy wavered. They struggled on the boards. Wade battled nagging injuries. Bosh was drifting at times between roles. Even LeBron James, as steady as he was, couldn't always lift a roster that hadn't figured out how to fully unlock itself yet. And then, somewhere in the middle of the season, everything shifted. Head coach Eric Spoelstra leaned into a style almost no one else in the league was willing to play. He took Miami smaller, faster, and more versatile. He pulled Bosh away from the paint, trusted shooters in bigger moments, and asked LeBron and Wade to defend every possession in stretches. He built a system around speed, spacing, and perpetual movement. A system where the basketball never stuck and the pressure never stopped.
Defense. Wade from behind takes it away. Chalmers, pull, game!
And once the Heat embraced that identity, they became something entirely different. The 27-game winning streak was the breaking point for everyone watching. Night after night, teams threw their best shot at Miami, and night after night, they came up short. The Heat didn't overwhelm opponents with size. They overwhelmed them with tempo, intelligence, and the best player in the world hitting a level that nobody else could match. This was LeBron James at his absolute apex. The perfect blend of scoring, efficiency, defense, playmaking, and control. He read games like a conductor. He manipulated defenses, swallowed matchups, and turned every possession into a problem the opponent couldn't solve. His decision-making reached a point where the game looked slow, but only for him. It's arguably the most complete season a star has had in this modern era. But the Heat weren't a one-man story. Wade found a second wind. He sacrificed his ego and adapted his game. Bosh became the linchpin of Miami's spacing, anchoring their defense with mobility and switching that was way ahead of its time. Ray Allen, Shane Battier, Mike Miller, and Mario Chalmers formed a supporting cast built on discipline, toughness, and shot making. Udonis Haslem provided the edge, and Birdman provided the energy. They weren't just a collection of talent, they were a machine. When the playoffs arrived, their identity only sharpened. First, they handled Milwaukee easily. Then they survived a tough physical series with Chicago. And finally, they battled a rising Pacers team led by Paul George, Roy Hibbert, and a defense designed specifically to expose Miami's size issues. This was one of the few moments that they actually looked vulnerable. And that's what made the response so important. When the pressure rose, the Heat returned to their strengths: pace, spacing, decision-making, and LeBron's ability to tilt a game at will.
Battier gets it in. Here's James on the drive for the win.
Beautiful move from James. Great play drawn up by Eric Spoelstra.
Then came the finals. San Antonio was the purest basketball team of its era, a masterclass in execution and unselfishness. Miami wasn't facing a mismatch or an overmatched opponent. They were facing another giant, a team that could read their rotations, anticipate their cuts, and force them to play their sharpest basketball. This series became a test of resilience. Game after game, Miami had to adjust, recalibrate, and push beyond their comfort zone. Ray Allen's shot in Game 6 is iconic, but the moment only matters because the Heat earned the right to survive long enough to take advantage of it.
To Green, blocked by Bosch. Game over. There'll be a Game 7.
In Game 7, Miami delivered their most precise performance of the season. LeBron was surgical. Wade was fearless. Shane Battier hit threes that turned the entire arena into a furnace. And Eric Spoelstra coached with total conviction. When the Miami Heat closed out this series, they weren't just champions again. They were fully realized.
It's back-to-back titles for the Heat. The 2013 NBA championship resides once again in Miami.
This wasn't the brash experimental creation from 2011. This was a masterpiece, a collection of talent that learned how to sacrifice, evolve, and transform into something greater than its individual parts. And that's why the 2013 Miami Heat belong in this video. Not simply because they won 66 games, not because of their 27-game winning streak, not because of the back-to-back titles. They belong because they represented the modern evolution of basketball. Positionless lineups, spread out floors, switching defenses, high IQ decision-making, a superstar operating a historic efficiency, a roster built for adaptability and speed. The Miami Heat didn't dominate like the Lakers did. They dominated by reshaping the tempo of the sport because their ceiling, once unlocked, was as bright as any team that has ever touched the floor. And I can tell y'all firsthand, man, I did not like the Miami Heat at this time. Who did, right?
I'm blessed. So what everybody say about me off the court don't matter. I ain't got no words.
Quick side note, if you guys are enjoying the video, be sure to drop a like and subscribe. It would really help me reach our goal of 100,000 subs. Also, make sure you guys go subscribe to our brand new podcast channel, Jay-Z Courtside. That, as well as our Twitch streams, Twitter, and Discord server will all be linked down below in the description. Back to the video. The Miami Heat earned their greatness through evolution, through finding the perfect balance between talent, sacrifice, and a style that redefined the modern game. But not every legendary team needs reinvention to reach its peak. Before the era of spacing and positionless basketball, there was a team that mastered the fundamentals so completely that the league spent years trying to catch up to them. A team built on size, discipline, ball movement, and an almost impossible level of chemistry. To understand how dominance looked before the three-point revolution, you have to go back to Boston, back to the 1986 Celtics, a roster so deep, so balanced, and so connected that many still consider them the most complete team ever assembled. The 1986 Boston Celtics dominated because they were an actual team. They had size, shooting, defense, passing, leadership, depth, and an identity that never wavered. If the Heat were built on evolution and the Lakers on raw force, the Celtics were built on a perfect understanding of who they were. And in that era, no team understood itself better. Their season began with a sense of unfinished business. Boston had lost the 1985 finals to the Lakers, a loss that stung deeply because it challenged the pride of a franchise built on toughness and execution. Larry Bird entered the new season sharper and hungrier. Kevin McHale emerged ready to prove that he was more than just a supporting star. Robert Parrish stayed steady as the anchor in the middle. And the arrival of Bill Walton, a former MVP whose career had been derailed by injuries, changed everything. Most teams build around their starting lineup. The 1986 Celtics built around waves. Their starters could break you, their bench could finish you. And Walton, finally healthy, gave Boston a second unit that could start for half the league. His passing, timing, and intelligence made their offense flow with the same rhythm even when Bird and McHale were resting. That consistency is what made the Celtics so suffocating. They didn't rely on streaks or hot shooting. They didn't depend on one player to carry them. They simply executed at a level that no other team could match. Bird controlled games with vision and precision that made every possession feel intentional. McHale scored on the post with moves defenders still hadn't solved. Parrish protected the paint and punished smaller matchups. Dennis Johnson provided grit, leadership, and late game steadiness. Danny Ainge spaced the floor and made timely plays. Every player knew their role, trusted the system, and bought into the bigger picture. And when the Celtics played at home, they were untouchable. Boston Garden became a fortress. The Celtics went 40-1 on their floor, a record that still looks unreal even decades later. This team was fueled by the energy in Boston. And when that building started rocking, the Celtics didn't just outplay teams. They overwhelmed them psychologically. Their regular season dominance carried into the playoffs with the same calm certainty. They handled Chicago easily, though not without witnessing the early brilliance of a young Michael Jordan. They moved through Atlanta without breaking the rhythm. And the most impressive part of their postseason run wasn't a single explosive stretch. It was the feeling that Boston never panicked, never rushed, never played out of character. And after handling Chicago and Atlanta, Boston reached the Eastern Conference Finals and swept the Milwaukee Bucks. That single series was the clearest example of how far ahead the Celtics were compared to the rest of the conference. Milwaukee wasn't a weak opponent. They were disciplined, well coached, polished and physical. Boston still took them apart in 4 straight games without ever feeling pressured. It was another reminder that the Celtics didn't just beat teams, they controlled them. And at the center of it all, it was Larry Bird playing at the height of his powers. This wasn't just a superstar leading a great roster. This was a basketball mind operating on a whole different level. Bird controlled games without rushing, forcing, or ever seeming off balance. He dictated tempo with his passing, punished mismatches out of the post, and hit shots that most players wouldn't even bother attempting. What made him dangerous wasn't just his skill, it was anticipation. He saw rotations before they happened, cutters before they opened, and defensive gaps before anyone else recognized them, and elevated everyone around him. When the Celtics needed poise, he supplied it. When they needed a spark, he delivered it. Bird didn't dominate because he overwhelmed opponents physically. He dominated because he understood the game more completely than anyone else on the floor. In 1986, he was the perfect blend of talent and control, the steady pulse behind a team that almost never made mistakes. They knew exactly who they were, and they stayed that way from the first round in the playoffs all the way into the NBA Finals. Houston was waiting for them there, a rising team with elite size in Hakeem Olajuwon and Ralph Sampson. The Rockets actually made it interesting at times. Olajuwon forced Boston to adjust. Sampson created matchup problems, but even then, the Celtics remained composed. They used their depth, their execution, and their passing to wear Houston down. They slowed the pace when needed, pushed it when they saw an opening, and trusted that their structure would hold. And it did. Boston closed the series in 6 games, capping off a 67-win season with a championship that felt like the fulfillment of everything that era of Celtics basketball was built on. There was nothing fluky about it, nothing chaotic, nothing that needed a miracle, just complete, undeniable superiority. That's what makes the 1986 Celtics so important in this conversation. They didn't dominate through athletic advantages or modern spacing. They didn't lean on stars playing out of their minds. Their greatness came from system, chemistry, and craftsmanship. They played basketball with a level of harmony that's rare in any era. Their starting front court is still considered one of the greatest ever assembled. Their bench, with Walton at the center of it, could run an offense through pure ball movement. Their defense communicated without any hesitation, and their best player in Larry Bird reached a level of command that made the entire floor feel like it belonged to him. That's why they belong on this list. Their balance, consistency, and execution formed a team with almost no weaknesses. A team that understood the essence of basketball better than anyone in their era. A team that represented the peak of structured dominance before the league shifted into faster, more perimeter-oriented styles. They didn't reinvent the game. They perfected their version of it. And that level of completeness is rare enough to stand the test of time.
We got an unselfish team. We work very well together, and we push the ball up the court, and we try to play a good brand for the fans and for ourselves, and we're very successful with it.
The Celtics showed what a perfectly balanced team can look like when every piece fits, every role is clear, and every possession feels intentional. Their greatness came from order, from a roster that operated like a single mind. But basketball is another kind of dominance, the kind that comes from a team so mentally sharp, so defensively suffocating, and so consistently overwhelming that an entire league feels them coming months in advance. To understand that version of greatness, you have to move a decade forward, to Chicago, to a roster led by a superstar at the height of his control, supported by a cast built for pressure. This is where the 1996 Bulls enter the conversation. This Bulls team entered the season with an uncommon mix of hunger and clarity. Their previous year ended abruptly against Orlando, a loss that revealed gaps in conditioning, physicality, and cohesion. Michael Jordan was still shaking off the rust from his baseball return. The team lacked an interior presence. Their defensive identity wasn't fully restored. That summer ended up changing everything. Jordan trained with a purpose that set the tone for the entire organization. His conditioning reached championship form again. His timing sharpened. His footwork and explosiveness returned. Scottie Pippen arrived ready to anchor both ends of the floor. He wasn't just Jordan's running mate. He was the stabilizer, the connector, and the evaluator of every possession. And then came in Dennis Rodman, the gamble that could have fractured that entire locker room if it didn't work out. But fortunately for Chicago, it worked instantly.
Rodman battling for the rebound, saving it in, and Kerr snatches it out of the air and drills it. Now that's winning basketball.
Rodman gave Chicago the toughness and rebounding edge they had missed since Horace Grant's departure. He wasn't a traditional third star. He was a specialist whose influence reached every corner of the game. His energy created extra possessions. His communication improved Chicago's defensive rotations. His presence alone allowed Jordan and Pippen to pressure the perimeter without worrying about what's behind them. And Phil Jackson understood exactly how to blend all of this together. His triangle offense wasn't designed to showcase just one player. It was designed to keep the structure intact even when opponents threw unconventional defenses at them. Jordan could still create in isolation. Pippen could still push in transition, but the triangle kept everyone involved, created natural spacing, and forced defenses to stay honest. The results came quickly. Chicago opened the season with confidence and never lost it. Jordan was sharp right from the start, scoring efficiently without needing to force the issue. Pippen filled every gap. Secondary playmaking, ball handling, cutting, and guarding the best perimeter scorer on the other side. Rodman controlled the glass and took on the toughest interior matchups. Tony Kukoc, Ron Harper, and Steve Kerr formed a reliable supporting cast that knew their jobs and performed them consistently. By midseason, the Bulls were playing with a rhythm that felt unavoidable. Their defense tightened around opponents and squeezed possessions into low percentage outcomes. Their offense trusted the triangle, picking defenses apart with patience rather than explosiveness. They won close games with execution and blew teams out with authority. Their record kept on climbing, not because they were chasing history, but because their nightly standards stayed the same. They finished the regular season 72-10, and at that time, it felt untouchable. Not just because of the number, but because nothing about their season felt unstable or streak dependent. Their success was built on structure, on health, on discipline, and on a roster where every piece complemented the next. Chicago entered the postseason with the same discipline they carried all year long, and the Eastern Conference never offered real resistance. They swept the Miami Heat in the opening round, controlled the Knicks 4-1 with steady execution, and then swept the Orlando Magic to erase the frustration of the previous season. Each of these series felt like a reminder that the Bulls had restored their identity, just complete control from one round to the next. Unlike the first 3 rounds, their finals matchup against Seattle brought some challenges. Gary Payton's defense made Jordan work, and Seattle's athletic wings tested Chicago's spacing. But even under pressure, the Bulls stayed composed. They adjusted matchups, slowed the pace, and leaned on their veterans. Their experience carried them through 6 games to close out the series. And Game 6 carried a weight that went far beyond just the scoreboard. Jordan won the championship on Father's Day, his first title since the passing of his father. When the final buzzer sounded, Jordan dropped to the floor in the locker room, overwhelmed by everything the season had demanded from him. It wasn't just a trophy, it was a circle closing, a return to the top that felt almost poetic. What makes this team so compelling in a conversation about the greatest ever isn't just about the wins, it's the way they earned them. Their defense communicated with anticipation. Their offense trusted a system instead of isolations. Their stars filled roles that enhanced one another rather than competing for numbers. And throughout that season, they maintained a level of focus that never really wavered. Jordan played one of the smartest and most controlled seasons of his career. Pippen delivered two-way balance that few players in any era could ever match. Rodman changed games without scoring. The supporting cast provided shooting, spacing, and continuity. Phil Jackson's system gave everything structure. The 1996 Bulls represent a version of dominance rooted in consistency and mental toughness. That's why they remain one of the most respected teams in league history. They didn't overwhelm opponents with one single advantage. They beat them by controlling the terms of every game and maintaining that standard for an entire season.
This is for Daddy. I'm very happy for him.
The Bulls set a standard on discipline, balance, and a level of mental toughness that kept them steady from opening night through June. Their greatness came from clarity. They knew exactly who they were and played with total conviction. But the league eventually changed. Spacing expanded. Pace increased. Skill sets stretched to places no one in the 90s could have imagined. And in this new landscape, another team emerged that pushed the ceiling of basketball even higher. To understand how far the sport evolved and how overwhelming a roster can become when elite talent meets modern geometry, you have to look at the 2017 Golden State Warriors. This Warriors team didn't rise out of nowhere. They rose out of heartbreak. The year before, they set a record with 73 wins, pushed the limits of what a modern offense could look like, and looked destined to finish a historic season with a championship parade. Instead, the ending became one of the most shocking twists in league history. A 3-1 lead slipped away. The Cavaliers completed the comeback, and overnight, Golden State went from unstoppable to vulnerable. What happened next was something nobody could have ever predicted. Kevin Durant, one of the most gifted scorers the league had ever seen, chose to join them.
Well, I'm viewing it as the weakest move I've ever seen from a superstar. Plain and simple. That's just how I look at it.
This move didn't just shift the balance of power. It redrew the entire landscape. The Warriors suddenly had a core of 4 players whose games didn't clash, didn't overlap awkwardly, and didn't require sacrifice in a damaging way. They complemented each other in a way basketball rarely allows. Steph Curry remained the engine. His gravity bent defenses long before he ever touched the ball. Defenders chased him through screens, over hedges, and into rotations that opened the floor for everyone else. His willingness to move without the ball made the offense unpredictable. His shooting made every possession a threat.
3 seconds. Curry from half court. Oh! He puts it in at the buzzer.
Kevin Durant brought poise and inevitability. Where Curry stretched defenses, Durant punished them. He gave Golden State a scoring option who didn't need rhythm to get going and didn't need space to be dangerous. His efficiency, length, and versatility filled the one area Golden State sometimes struggled. He was the perfect bucket getter for any offense in the league. Klay Thompson provided structure. He didn't need to dribble. He didn't need plays called for him. He simply filled the gaps, running the floor, spacing the corners, chasing screens, and guarding the best perimeter player on the other side. His presence allowed Curry and Durant to stay aggressive without worrying about matchups. And Draymond Green tied everything together. He wasn't the scorer. He didn't need to be. He organized the defense, called out coverages, protected the rim, pushed in transition, and turned loose balls into fast breaks. He made sure the Warriors never lost their identity, even with another superstar joining the mix. Together, the four of them created a system that felt complete in a way no previous roster ever had. Every strength covered another player's weakness. Every role made sense. Every possession flowed. The regular season became a clinic in synchronization. Golden State wasn't chasing 73 wins anymore. They were managing, pacing, and sharpening. Their offense moved with an ease that no team could mirror. Every cut had purpose. Every screen created a new puzzle. Their spacing stretched across the entire floor, and defenders spent possessions guessing instead of reacting. Defensively, they were just as sharp. Green controlled the paint with anticipation. Iguodala stabilized the second unit and handled matchups that required discipline. Durant protected the rim and rotated with a timing he never had to use in Oklahoma City. Their pace could shift within a single possession. One moment they were walking the ball up and running a half-court action with precision, and the next they were sprinting into transition off a rebound or a deflection. Their offense flowed with layers of movement that defenses could not keep up with. Every night looked different, yet the result usually felt the same. Opponents weren't dealing with one style. They were dealing with a team that could change its shape based on what the game demanded. That flexibility, more than any hot stretch or momentum swing, is what made the Warriors feel so overwhelming. Then the playoffs arrived, and their ceiling became impossible to ignore. Golden State swept through the first 3 rounds without a loss. Portland fell quickly. Utah never found a comfortable possession. San Antonio offered resistance early until injury shifted the matchup. But even at full strength, the gap in spacing and shot creation would have been overwhelming. The Warriors were playing their style at a pace opponents just could not handle. The finals brought Cleveland back into the picture. LeBron, Kyrie, and a roster built specifically to challenge Golden State's spacing. But this time, the Warriors were healthier, deeper, and more complete.
Opportunity. Durant for 3. It's good. Kevin Durant from downtown.
Durant delivered the steady scoring and defensive presence that they needed. Curry manipulated the floor with constant off-ball movement. The ball never stuck, and the rhythm never faded.
Curry, 3. Bang!
Game after game, Golden State showed a version of basketball that felt evolutional. Cleveland had star power and experience. Golden State had answers. They closed the series in 5 games, ending the postseason with a 16-1 record. No stumbles, no stretches where their identity wavered, just complete control from the first round to the final buzzer. That's what makes the 2017 Warriors different from every other team on this list. Their success wasn't rooted in one dimension. It wasn't the product of a single explosive scorer or a single defensive system. Their advantage came from the combination of talent, intelligence, spacing, chemistry, and versatility. Every piece enhanced the others. Every rotation made sense. Every lineup had a purpose. Their peak was built on the modern principles that shape the league today: pace, spacing, shot creation, and defensive flexibility. And in all those areas, they reached a level that no other roster had matched. That's why the 2017 Warriors stand here as the final chapter. Their talent was overwhelming, but their structure was even more impressive. They could adapt to any opponent and still keep their identity intact. They played as if the sport had moved into a new form, and they were the first team to fully understand its new shape. A team that executed with the mental toughness of a veteran group while still having the energy and creativity of a young core. The Warriors didn't chase history this time. Instead, they reshaped it. Each of these 5 teams reached the summit in their own way. The Lakers overwhelmed opponents with star power and a playoff run that felt mythical. The Heat built their greatness through growth and a superstar reaching the peak of his understanding of the game. The Celtics represented balance, depth, and structure, a roster with no real weak points and a style that demanded total discipline. The Bulls combined toughness, defensive control, and a level of consistency that made every night feel steady and predictable. And the Warriors showcased a modern blueprint built on spacing, versatility, and a roster that could change shape without losing its rhythm. Every one of them won a championship. Every one of them left an imprint that shaped the league around them. And every one of them has a legitimate case as the greatest team to ever play. But when you look deeper, the question becomes something bigger than just wins and rings. It becomes about ceilings, about how complete a team could be at its absolute best, about how they matched up against their era and how they would match up against any era, about versatility, spacing, defense, and the ability to solve problems that no opponent had an answer for. It becomes about whether a roster had weaknesses that could be exploited, or whether they reached a level where the matchups barely mattered. This decision is tough. It wasn't about the most iconic moment or the best storyline. It wasn't about which season felt the most historic or which team dominated in the way that their era allowed them to. This answer came down to one thing: which team reached the version of basketball that nobody else could reasonably replicate? Some teams controlled games with discipline. Some suffocated opponents with defense. Some rode the excellence of 1 or 2 transcendent stars. And some built a system that never cracked under pressure. The consistency, the explosiveness, the talent, the chemistry, the adaptability, the ability to win in any style without sacrificing who they were. Only one team checked every box. A roster with no overstated roles, no wasted possessions, and no stretch of the season where their identity wavered. When you stack all 5 side by side, One team stands just a little bit taller. One roster reached the completeness that no other contender quite matched. And that's why I chose the 2017 Golden State Warriors as the greatest team in NBA history. Now, I know what you're thinking. Choosing this winner wasn't a decision I made lightly. And honestly, I get why some people won't like it. I don't even like it. This team frustrated fans in a way few champions ever have. Kevin Durant joining a 73-win roster felt impossible. It felt like the league bent into something unrecognizable. It changed how people talked about competition, loyalty, parity, everything. And for a lot of fans, it never felt fair. But fairness isn't the question here. The question is which team reached the highest level of basketball we've ever seen. And once you take emotion out of it, once you break down the matchups, the spacing, the shot creation, the defensive versatility, and the sheer volume of problems Golden State posed, the answer becomes harder and harder to deny. No team in this conversation has a clean solution for the Warriors. Not the Lakers, not the Celtics, not even the Bulls. Take Chicago, for example. They match up well physically. Jordan would score. Pippen would make life difficult on Durant. Rodman would fight for every board. But Golden State forces choices that Chicago never had to make in its own era. You can put Pippen on Durant, but then who chases Curry off the ball for 48 minutes? You can try to switch everything, but that leaves Clay open or Curry probing mismatches. You can play big and punish them inside, but that slows your offense and gives Golden State the pace they want. Every adjustment solves one problem and opens up two more. That's the difference. The Bulls could minimize the damage, but they couldn't eliminate it. And that's the story for every great team we covered. They each have a path to victory, but none have a consistent one. Golden State had too much shot creation, too much spacing, too much versatility in every lineup. Their margin for error was enormous. Their weaknesses were minimal. Again, you don't have to like how the roster came together. You don't have to enjoy the implications of a superstar joining a record-breaking team. But when the question is strictly about basketball, about peak performance, adaptability, and the highest possible ceiling, the conclusion becomes unavoidable. The 2017 Warriors reached a level of play that no other team in any era has fully matched. And that's why they stand at the top. So after breaking down 5 incredible champions, comparing styles, eras, and the philosophies that define them, we land on an answer that I know won't feel satisfying to everyone. This was not the team I wanted to give the crown to. I grew up loving eras where competition felt balanced, where dynasties earned every inch the slow way. But this isn't about what feels good. This is about what's true. Greatness doesn't always look fair. Sometimes it looks inevitable. When the 2017 Warriors reached their ceiling, nobody in NBA history could touch them. Not the Lakers, not the Celtics, not the Bulls, not anyone. Whether it frustrates people or not, the 2017 Golden State Warriors are the greatest team in NBA history. If you enjoyed, please don't forget to drop a like and subscribe. It would really help us reach our goal of 100,000 subs. There's some videos on the screen that I think you'll love. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.